What is up, everybody? We are back with a brand new episode of the Silver Lions Playbook podcast. Of course, we are back with my co-host Thomas Urich,
Hey guys, how you doing?
and today we will be talking about a lot of Lions stuff. Obviously, the Super Bowl, and then we'll be having our around the NFL segment, which I'm not going to bring up exactly what we're going to talk about yet, because the yearly awards, but there's something else I want to keep for when we talk about it. But First of all, let's start off with our Lions stuff. So the Lions have officially extended our fullback Jason Kabinda on a 2-year contract. I love this deal. The exact money, I'm sure he didn't get very much. Actually, let me look that up. I'm not sure it was reported yet. But I'm just gonna look this up to make sure. But while I'm doing that, he's honestly the perfect fullback for this Lions team. He was a linebacker, moved to fullback, I think last year, or the year before, actually pre Dan Campbell, but he's a Dan Campbell player pretty much. He plays hard, plays tough, plays with a chip on his shoulder. But it does not look like the contract's money was reported yet. So 2-year contract extension for him, and I wouldn't necessarily say he's a key piece in terms of like big name or big position, but I would say he's a key piece to this offense. And in a locker room, he's a great locker room guy as well. So I love that re-signing, and I love keeping a guy like that on to help this culture shift that is happening in Detroit right now. And then next, our inside linebackers coach Mark DeLeon is gone. We have mutually parted ways, reportedly. I don't know how I feel about this one, because our linebackers haven't been great, but this last year they were better than they have been. But maybe it's a good thing going in a new direction with the inside linebackers specifically, and hopefully get some better play out of them next year. Maybe get a rookie and a free agent, and really kind of overhaul this position group, because our two best linebackers are now free agents. Jalen Reeves-Maybin being, honestly, in my opinion, the top one, and Alex Anzalone likely will not be back next year. So JRM is the guy that we'll probably bring back, but that will be later on. And then I don't have any names for this yet. Next week I'll have like a real list of guys that I really like for this position, because I don't know if they'll go ahead and hire a guy right away for the position. They might wait a little bit. So I'm hoping that this next week I can really compile some good information on guys and maybe where we're going with that position. Because this is kind of a big, coaching position for us as a team. Because like I said before, our linebackers have never been that good. So if we can come in and get a actually very good linebacker coach, that could be a, step, maybe even 2 steps in the right direction, because of how bad our linebackers have been in the last, decade, maybe.
Yeah,
We haven't really had any studs in a long time.
yeah.
But next we have Malik Willis at 2, and I don't know. This is a reported thing. I don't know how I feel about this. I don't think we will take Malik Willis at 2. I really don't. But
Father.
a lot of the stuff I'm hearing is that Malik Willis could go top 5. And we talked about it on the podcast before, and you mentioned you think he will go top 10. And I would agree, but I think it'll be from a team that trades up, or a team like maybe the Giants, trying to get a guy at quarterback while they still have Daniel Jones under contract for 1 year, because Malik Willis is the type of guy that might need to sit. And they've been in, the Russell Wilson talks, and they've been in some of the talks with Deshaun Watson as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if they did go quarterback early, specifically a guy like Malik Willis, because he does fit that, Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson mold of a player. So if that's what they're going for with, Brian Dable at head coach over there now, with Josh Allen being that style of quarterback in Buffalo, it would make a lot of sense, in my opinion, if a team like the Giants went after him, with 2 first-round picks this year in the top 10. And that by itself gives you a lot of capital to maybe even move up, but it also gives you more leeway when taking a quarterback that's going to sit for a year, because when you have 2 top 10 picks, you can go, okay, we can use this number 5 pick on Malik Willis, right, and sit him behind Daniel Jones for the year. but we'll go use number 7 on an impact player that's going to help us this year and when Malik Willis is ready to go. So it makes it a lot easier on the fans specifically to, take a player like a Trey Lance last year with the Niners, who's just going to sit all year. But I don't think we'll take him, and I don't think he should be taking that too, in my opinion.
No, I think that the only way that he's going to be the Detroit Lion is that if the Detroit Lions trade down from 2 to the New York Jets, just because they are, like you mentioned, the Giants might want Willis. I don't think that he's a perfect fit. I would rather trade the 2nd round pick for someone like Jimmy Garoppolo. I just think he has higher upside. But I would trade it to like Jets because they have been rumored to be interested in Thibodeau. And then with the first New York Jets pick, I would pick like a Tyler Hamilton or a David Java or someone that the Lions best player available almost. And then with that 2nd pick, should Willis still be there and the Lions' interest in him is accurate, then I would maybe consider him there. But to me, I don't think that he's going to be top 5 at all. I think that he might slide into the bottom 10. Again, a lot of talk that I've heard during the Senior Bowl week is that Pittsburgh Steelers are in love with him. So to me, they are the team that I have as a target to move into top 10. But I wouldn't be shocked if Carolina or Giants, any of those teams would make a play for him.
Agreed. And honestly, this is one of the biggest rises we've seen this year for sure, because Malik Willis before was, top of the 2nd round, bottom of the 1st round type of guy. And then after the Senior Bowl, shot up to, top 15 minimum, it seems like now.
Well, it's funny because was quite a rise and quite a fall from Willis, because if my memory serves correct, he was always a player that before the college football season started, we had Slovis, we had Daniels, we had the guy from Oklahoma,
Rattler.
Yeah. And then we had Willis, and many people were high on Willis and considered him a potential top 5 pick at that time. And then all those quarterbacks kind of had a poor season, and they all fell. And Malik Willis had a decent season and kind of remained in that top 5 talk, but didn't have a great season to solidify himself as the number 1 option.
Right.
At least in my opinion.
I agree there because I feel like you said before, Malik Willis, for me personally, at the beginning of the season was my QB1, off the bat before the season started. And then a few games in, it stayed that way. And then as the season went, I think I have him at 2, maybe 3 now. I have to do deep dives on all these guys anyway, so don't take this as, gospel or anything for me. But I think Malik Willis is a very intriguing prospect because he's like a Trey Lance from last season, where likely he needs to sit, but he's got all the athletic upside. He's got the big arm, but he went to a small school. He did play well there, but you never know when it comes down to it because he's playing against guys that likely won't make it to the NFL. So it's just a big question mark. But at the same time, we saw a guy like Trey Lance last year get drafted, and it's almost like the same thing. Think about this. The only difference is we don't have to trade up. We have Jared Goff. They had Jimmy Garoppolo, right? We are the number 2 pick. They were at the number 3 pick. They're almost the same player. And I was a guy that loved Trey Lance last year. I'm not going to lie to you. I would have loved him in Detroit. But going 3, we couldn't get him. But I feel like, I don't know, it makes a lot of sense. But personally, as a Lions fan, I don't know if I want that due to the there's no really instant impact unless you're going to go, okay, Goff, you get the first 4 games. If you mess up, we're starting Willis and then we'll trade you. That's a different scenario. Mm-hmm. But if we're going the 49ers route straight up where all season Goff's going to play and then Willis will only play if he gets hurt or in like certain situations, I don't like that pick that much, even though it's, a future pick. I guess it just depends on what we do in free agency and what kind of tone we're going out with this season. Like, and that's another thing I wanted to talk about, were the comments made by Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell on Jared Goff. This is another thing that makes me and other people believe we might go quarterback this draft, specifically early, and specifically Willis early on. They aren't tied to Goff. They aren't like, he's our guy, he's our quarterback, this is what we're running with next year. They're saying he's going to have to earn it. He's going to have to come in next year and earn his spot. I know that could just be them going, hey, this team, nobody's solidified with how this went last year. Not one player on this team is solidified. You're all going to have to come in. It's like that type of culture where everybody's going to have to work. I mean, clearly Amani Oruwariye is going to be a starting corner for us next year. And, DeAndre Swift's going to be our running back. That those type of things are TJ Hawkinson's going to be obvious. They're still going to have to come in and work. And I think it could be kind of like a tone setter that they're trying to do with Goff saying that, saying, oh, well, he's going to have to earn his spot. It could be obvious he's going to be our quarterback, but that's just the way they go about it. So maybe we're reading too much into it. It's really early on too. So we don't really know how they feel. They don't even know how they feel probably. I mean, we still got 2 months to go.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this might be a smokescreen from Detroit. Because I don't know. I really like the Lance comparison, but at the same time, I do feel like Lance was probably overdrafted. Just comparing what Mac Jones has done at number 15, what Justin Fields has done with Chicago. Trey Lance only had one opportunity to play against Arizona, and he didn't do well. And then Jimmy Garoppolo did so well during the season. He's a little inconsistent and he has his flaws, but the guy wins. Yeah. And so to me, I don't know exactly if the Trey Lance experiment or the Trey Lance pick is as highly sought out as it was before. And I would love a 49er fan perspective on this, because to me, I don't know, I feel there were players in the draft that the 49ers could have drafted that maybe would have helped them beat a Los Angeles Rams team and go to the Super Bowl. Trey Lance might have all the potential in it, but I don't know if he was worth that number 3 pick.
Well, and see, the thing with that is too, the Lions aren't even in the same situation. So I think it might even have been worse than the Niners, worse for the Niners in this situation, because they were 1 game away from the Super Bowl and they had the 3rd overall pick and they chose a backup quarterback pretty much. I mean, that's, that's how you got to look at it when it comes down to it.
Yeah. It's basically the Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love thing, but higher in the draft.
Yeah. And a lot more picks given up too. They gave up 3 firsts for him.
Yeah, for sure.
And I don't. Here's another thing I want to add about Trey Lance is I think he was a little bit better of a prospect than Malik Willis is, because I mean he never threw an interception in college football, so that's something. I mean, you got to give it to him for that. But
so to me, the Trey Lance experiment is still open. I would love to see him actually play. I think he will get a shot this upcoming season, but I don't know. I feel the Lions are saying Jared Goff is now a quarterback for the future, and Malik Willis or some other quarterback might be an option just to get better trade downs, because I don't know if the draft board is good for them. They might prefer a Thibodeau, or they might prefer a Hutchinson and look and see that Jacksonville is going to draft that, and so they might want to trade down.
Well, another thing to add to your point with that is the consensus with this draft is it's not top heavy. There's no number one guy that you're like, you have to take him. And even there's the top 5 is even kind of, you could say the top 10 is pretty similar in terms of impact. The top 10 players, at least.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's another thing to take into consideration with this smokescreen thing, because maybe that would make sense. Maybe they don't love Aiden or Kayvon or Kyle Hamilton. Maybe they like them all pretty evenly. So they think, well, if we boost up Malik Willis at 2, maybe somebody else will move up, like, a Jets or a Giants, and then we'll get 2 picks and be able to get maybe both Kayvon and Kyle Hamilton. I mean, obviously that's not what happened, but in that situation, that's what you'd want. But
absolutely. And like, I think it's a really smart decision on how the Lions can go about it, like collecting assets and building the team not around that top 2 pick, but around maybe 2 top 10 picks
and that 32nd pick and the 34th pick. So we're talking about potentially 4 to 5 top 35 players in this draft.
Yeah, and if you guys and if the Lions kill it, and this draft is going to be remarkably good and remembered for a long time.
I mean, I think even last year's draft we killed pretty well. I mean, getting Sewell and the 2 D linemen and Derek Barnes. Sure. I mean, and Ife Melifonwu was a starting corner for us for a while with, injuries and stuff, and he didn't play terrible. He played pretty well actually against Devontae Adams last week of the season, which I just actually rewatched a little bit of that game a couple days ago. But and another thing, sidebar with Hulu Live TV, one of my favorite things about this is that they do replays, of games throughout the year. Just record them and I can watch them back whenever I feel like it after the season's over. So it's like I'll still have football throughout the whole off season.
That's awesome.
But yeah.
I think that the Lions, if what really differs this draft from last draft, in my opinion, is that if the Lions can trade number 2 for a two top 5 picks, or 2 top 10 picks from the New York teams, you're looking at 2 really impactful defensive players, or a really impactful defensive player and really impactful offensive player.
Yeah.
And the 2 defensive linemen drafted last year are great, but you probably wouldn't consider them a top 10 player, which might potentially draft this year.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Both of them are interior D linemen too. So likely we'll draft an edge player and then we'll have a super young D line across the board because Okora is only 26 as well. And I feel like, this is what I was going to say. What you mentioned earlier would be awesome. If we could trade down, with the Giants or the Jets and get Kyle Hamilton and David Ojabo, that would be beautiful. I mean, as a Lions fan, I would rejoice in that because you're looking at it like we just got 2 top 10 talents, but also instead of going, Hutch or Kayvon at 2, we still get a very, very good pass rusher, but probably the best defensive player or even the best prospect in the draft with Kyle Hamilton. And that's a big need for us. I think we need 2 safeties now. I don't know if we re-sign Walker. If we re-sign him, we only need 1, but as of right now, we need 2. And that's something we're going to have to think about when it comes to this draft. Because if we don't take one early, we'll need 1.
I love the Lions position in this draft. Just with other comp picks and other assets that they can acquire. To be honest with you, I didn't love the Matthew Stafford trade for them. I thought that Jared Goff was a bit of a negative asset. So just because of his contract, he played really well during the second half of the season. But I felt like getting Jared Goff probably should have gave the Lions another top first round pick, just because this contract is pretty bad. But I thought the Rams did really well in that year, which is another reason why I have the biggest love-hate relationship with the Rams, because they've built their team so well, but to me they've always kind of manipulated the system a little bit, trading all the first round picks, making salary cap maneuvers that are really good to acquire all these pieces and have them long term.
Right.
But kudos to the Rams. That's what they did, and that's awesome.
Here's one thing I will say about the Rams. Before the Super Bowl stuff, there's a chance that they're not that good next year. And I know it's a small chance, but there is a chance that, Aaron Donald might retire. I don't know if this is happening or not, but there is a chance that could happen. And there's a chance that a lot of these free agents walk. They don't have any first round picks. They don't pick, I think, until the third round this year. And when you're talking about Odell Beckham's a free agent, Von Miller's a free agent, Aaron Donald might retire. That's a lot of big losses, especially when a guy like Robert Woods, he's coming off an ACL, but he's also almost 30 years old. And that's tough to come off of as a receiver at that age. So, I mean, we're not talking about, they're going to be a 4-win team or anything, but there's a big chance that they don't make the Super Bowl next year. So that first next year could be a top 20 pick, top 25 pick, which isn't really that big of a difference. But I think taking Jared Goff was a smart thing. I do not like the contract. And there's another thing about the contract I don't like, because we restructured him and gave him more guaranteed money. I didn't like that at all. Which I guess it opened up some money last year, but I still don't like it, because you're tied to him now. At least pretty much through this season, because you eat $15 million in dead cap if you trade him this year. But at the same time, they probably like Jared Goff, and if he keeps playing like he did the back half of the season, we could get a first rounder for him. So if we think about it that way, it's like an asset for an asset, basically.
If you guys get like the first round draft pick, that'd be awesome, and that would definitely make me change my mind on the trade. But we'll see. I think it would be a huge win if the Rams are a good team next year, but like not a Super Bowl contender team like you mentioned. So it's definitely a winning game for Lions draft.
And I think like you mentioned before, well, sort of, I think both teams won this trade, because the Rams won it they got a Super Bowl, clearly. But the Lions won it, in my opinion, too, because they were never in the position to win a Super Bowl last year or the year before. So trade your old quarterback, get some picks back, and maybe we can make something else happen in a couple years, because it could lead to us getting a Super Bowl in 3 years, possibly, from this trade. But last but not least on this Lions talk stuff, and I'm going to try my best to kind of make this quick. Who should we re-sign in the offseason? I have the list of all the guys that are going to be free agents this offseason, and there's quite a bit that I think we should bring back. Riley Patterson, the kicker, comes to mind. He was great for us last year at the end of the year. And then another guy like Jack Fox, our punter. I mean, we have to re-sign Jack Fox as well. Tracy Walker is a guy I would love to re-sign because he's young-ish. He's 26. We could get him on a 2-year deal and have him as our starting safety next year. He's a very good player. I wouldn't say he's elite or anything, but he's a good player that you could get for pretty cheap. Bring him back to Detroit for a year or two, and it'll shore up that hole we have at the safety position. And then a guy that I think a lot of Lions fans have loved throughout this year after Frank Ragnow went down, Evan Brown, the center. He played great after Ragnow went down, and I think he'd be perfect for us, not only as a depth piece, but maybe he can play right guard. Because if you can move him over to right guard, I mean, we got a really good offensive line over here, and that means we could trade or cut a guy like Vaitai and open up another $4.5 million in cap space. And that would be awesome.
And that's the biggest free agent to me for the Lions to resign Evan Brown, because exactly like what you mentioned, where you can slam to right guard and you can move on from Big V, and that would create most cap space for you guys to potentially get a linebacker depth piece that you guys need. And so to me, he's the biggest guy. And then it would probably be like the punter Fox, because
I agree there.
That guy's great.
And then right under them, in my opinion, I would have Jalen Reeves-Maybin, the linebacker. He played great for us down the stretch, specifically against the Cardinals. He was the best defensive player on the field for us by far. He was disrupting plays, making big tackles, making stuff happen. He is 27 years old, so he's starting to get a little bit older than what we would want. But he's been a Lion his whole career. We drafted him in the 4th round out of Tennessee. He's been a great special teams player. He's been a great, rotational linebacker his whole career. Now he might be in that starter level category. And even if not, he'll be cheap enough that you can bring him back to be kind of your special team or rotational linebacker type of guy that can play outside, inside. He can cover, he can stop the run, he can do a lot of stuff. So I think Jalen Reeves-Maybin is our 3rd biggest free agent.
Do you think that he's good enough as age to sign a long-term deal with a winning team? Because I don't think he's going to be a cornerstone for like the next Lions dynasty potentially.
I think if we could get him for like $3 million a year, it would be a smart decision for like a year or two, just because we have so many holes on this team. Bring him back to kind of be a rotational player. And here's my thing too. If we don't go out and draft a guy or get a guy in free agency, Jalen Reeves-Maybin is good enough to start on this team. It's just you'd like something a little bit better maybe, but we're not in that position yet. So if we could get him back for a 2-year deal, $3 million per, beautiful. I'd love that. But with that said, some team out there, like maybe the Denver Broncos or somebody that needs a linebacker that is a little bit closer to contending, might pay him a little bit more because I think he's good enough right now to be on a contending team as like a second inside linebacker on a 3-4. I think he'd be perfect. And then right next to him, I have Charles Harris, the outside linebacker. I think we need to bring him back, specifically if we're going to get rid of Trey Flowers, whether it be a trade or a cut, because he should be cheap. But on top of that, it's going to open a big hole once Trey Flowers is gone, because we don't have really anything on the edge other than Okwara on the team. Well, both Okwaras, but if we could bring back Charles Harris, that's a guy that can play outside linebacker in our base formation, play defensive end, on passing downs. And even if we draft a guy early, Charles Harris is a guy that will still play a lot, still be likely a starter, because we do have so many holes at pass rusher. And he won't be that expensive. And he played 77% of all snaps this season. So yeah, that's a guy that the Detroit Lions like quite a bit. And then Alex Anzalone is a guy that likely will walk, and we have heard some stuff about that for a while now. I feel like it seems pretty clear he's not going to come back to Detroit. I'd like him to come back. He was pretty good for us. It just depends on the money, really, because he's another Jalen Reeves-Maybin type that is, he's 28 years old. He's kind of a middling linebacker. Really, he's a second linebacker on a good team, in my opinion. And that's not really what we are right now, but I don't think he'll come back. And then last but not least of guys that I really want to re-sign, Josh Reynolds, the wide receiver. I think him and Amon-Ra St. Brown really helped Jared Goff's progression towards that back half, because once injuries started happening and guys like TJ Hawkinson and DeAndre Swift went down, that was a lot of targets that had to go somewhere. And, guys like Khalif Raymond, and Josh Reynolds and Amon-Ra got those targets, but it felt like Josh was kind of that catalyst, like the turning point for Goff. Like once he showed up in the receiving room, it's like Goff flipped a switch. Like he had some confidence in his receivers, it felt like. And like we mentioned before, that could have a little bit to do with Anthony Lynn stepping down as offensive coordinator, not calling plays anymore. But I'm not going to say it's all Josh Reynolds, of course, but it's a good sign when you can pick a guy up off of waivers that played with your quarterback before, and your quarterback instantly looks better, and he's going to be cheap too. So these are all guys that are going to be pretty cheap as well.
Yeah, I definitely think that Reynolds will probably resign with the Lions. So yeah, I agree that with all your picks, those are some really good players to resign and to look for next season.
And we're talking probably like 10 million to 15 million total for all the guys that I just said.
Yeah.
So it's not a big chunk.
Which still leaves cap room for a potential big free agent.
Especially if you move on from Trey Flowers.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of good free agents this year. I know I've talked about this a lot, but there's a lot of good free agents this year that we could add to this team. And not break the bank either. We could, like, okay, on my Lions franchise, for instance, Alan Lazard is a guy that I signed for, I think, $2 million, $3 million a year, and he leads the NFL in receiving yards right now. Clearly that probably won't happen in real life, but it's the fact that like a guy like Alan Lazard would make a lot of sense, or a guy like Cedric Wilson would make a lot of sense as these like lower tier wide receivers, quote unquote, that really just haven't gotten a chance yet. And I've always loved Alan Lazard. I mean, he's a Packer, but every time we play him, he's always making plays against us. He's a big body, he's fast. It'd be perfect. He'd be like he's like Kenny Golladay light pretty much for us, or would be, in my opinion. What's that face?
I don't know. I wouldn't compare Alan Lazard to Kenny Golladay, but
I'm not saying he's as good, but in terms of like the build, the play style, he'd fill that Kenny Golladay role for us decently. I think Alan Lazard's a pretty good receiver. I don't think we give him enough credit.
He's a very smart wide receiver, and he has very good a very good connection with Aaron Rodgers. So I expect him to potentially resign with the Packers, or go to a team that Aaron Rodgers ends up going to, if Aaron Rodgers decides.
I really brought him up just because, like I said, my Madden franchise with the Lions, he's doing great. But like, I really would like a guy like Cedric Wilson as well. I think he would even be a better than Alan Lazard for us, because he's, I think, 26 or the same age, but he's a little bit faster. He's got, he's a little more quick twitchy guy. And that's really what we need on this team. And he'd be super cheap too, probably like 3, maybe 5 million a year, depending on what he's getting from other teams. But that's all I got for who to resign for the Detroit Lions. Let us know if you guys want anybody else, if there's anybody else you think should be re-signed and for what. Maybe we'll talk about it in the next podcast. But next we have our Around the NFL segment. And first, we're going to talk about Tom Brady. Reports are that he might come back. Okay, sure, he might come back. I don't think he will. I think he's done. I think he's been retired since before he retired. I said it on here. I don't think Tom Brady is going to play next year. People want and wish. That's the thing. They want so bad that Tom Brady will come back. I don't know who wrote this. I don't know who reported this initially, but I would almost bet you they're a Bucs fan, or they live in Tampa or something like that. Or a Tom Brady fan. But I just feel like you said before the podcast when we talked about this, Tom Brady has not said anything that indicates he's coming back. Everything he said, I'm retired. I'm going to listen to him. I mean, I don't think there's anybody other than Tom Brady right now that I should be listening to, because even Adam Schefter screwed it up when it comes to Tom Brady.
Yeah.
So I'm going to listen to the man himself. And until he says that he's coming back, I'm not going to listen to it, because I don't know. It just makes too much sense. He's done. Let the Bucs do their thing. Do you think Bruce Arians comes back? I believe he will. We haven't heard anything other than that so far, but
yeah. I mean, I think that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers would be wise to do another Lovie Smith scenario and can Bruce Arians for Brian Leftwich. Just because I feel like Leftwich is a younger coordinator that is going to probably get poached by a team in the next year or two. And I think that because of his age, he offers more long-term upside than Bruce Arians does. But I don't think that's going to happen next year or this year. I think that could potentially happen in the next year or two. But I think that Tom Brady, I would agree that the chances of him staying retired are probably pretty high.
Yeah.
The one caveat that I have is that Gronkowski hasn't announced his retirement yet.
And here's another thing I was going to bring up with that too. Gronk also said he would be down to play for the Bengals. So I don't know if we should look at Gronk's retirement or not with Brady, because he has said he would play for another team, which before it was, I'm only playing with Brady. So we'll see on that front. But
yeah, that's a good point. I didn't hear those specific Bengals rumors, but it wouldn't shock me for him to play with a great quarterback, like Joe Burrow. So
he didn't exactly say Bengals. He said if there was, they asked him if there was another quarterback outside of Tom Brady that you would like to play with, who would it be? And he said, "Oh, I love that kid Joe Burrow in Cincinnati." So I mean, it's like, I don't know.
Yeah,
it's one of those things that he could just be saying that. We know how Gronk is. He doesn't even know what's going on half the time anyway. So he probably thinks he's 27 still and is just chilling, and he just won a Super Bowl in New England. But
yeah, my goodness, I have so many Gronk stories that I can tell you.
He's a wild one.
Yeah, that guy's a wild one for sure. But yeah, I think it's interesting that reports are now saying that Bucks basically forced him out. I don't necessarily think it's true. I think that Tom Brady's going to stay retired, but I mean, what else is there to talk about? Super Bowl's done, like the media needs to.
Yeah, there's got to be something. Yeah, headlines out of something.
Yep.
Speaking of that, though, yearly awards. Before we get to the Super Bowl. So the rookie of the year was who we always thought it would be. Offensive rookie of the year. Well, Pepsi rookie of the year was Jamar Chase. Okay. Which he also won AP offensive rookie of the year, which is like the NFL's awards. But we had defensive player of the year, TJ Watt. Well, actually, let's talk about Jamar Chase a little bit, because we've talked about him a lot. I know I feel like it's beating a dead horse at this point. We've been saying offensive rookie of the year since like week 4. But he deserved it.
It's interesting because like we had Jamar Chase at the beginning of the year because he was breaking records like crazy. And then in the middle of the season, New England Patriots going on a monster run, and we're like, this Mac Jones guy looks really, really good. Then Mac Jones like drastically falls off and at like what end of the season and like throws picks, and we're like, this Mac Jones guy sucks. What are we talking about?
I think what happened is Jamar Chase. I don't think it's about Mac Jones as it is much about Jamar Chase, right? So Mac Jones plays quarterback like we've talked about before, so he's going to get the nod when it comes down to it. But Jamar Chase was breaking records, right? And then like week 6 to week 8, he was putting up like 45 yards, 37 yards, 60 yards. Nothing huge. He was putting up normal numbers. So then we were like, well, maybe his first couple games were a fluke. And then he has a couple more 100-yard games, and everybody's like, oh, okay, Jamar Chase is back. But then Mac Jones is still up there because the Patriots were doing well. And I think what happened is Jamar Chase went for 200-plus yards against the Chiefs. If that game doesn't happen, he's probably still offensive rookie of the year, but I don't know if it was as wide of a margin as we talk about now.
Yeah, I think that realistically, like at the end of the year, I would say that was between him and Water. Water had an amazing end of the season. I think that Mac Jones had a really good middle of the season and kind of fell off in the latter portion of it, which made him fall in my mind. But Jamar, good wide receiver class. Jamar Chase definitely deserves it. And anytime that rookie wide receiver can be your number one option on a Super Bowl team is so good.
Yeah. And he's like a Deebo Samuel type. He's built like a running back. He's a big man. And that's going to be awesome for Cincy.
Which is like so odd because Deebo Samuel is like, what, 5'10", 5'11"?
I thought he was 6'1".
Is he 6'1"? Is that
I thought so. I might be wrong. I have no idea, to be honest.
That was a small guy.
Yeah. He might be 5'11", 6 foot.
6 foot. Okay.
We'll say 6 foot. But
and then like Ja'Marr Chase is like 6'5", isn't he?
Oh no, he's like 6'2", 6'1".
Is he really?
Yeah.
I thought he was giant of a man.
He's 6 foot.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay,
so they're basically the same. I think Jamar's like 220 or 215, and Debo's about 215, 220.
Okay.
But yeah, they're built like running backs pretty much. That's why you see Deebo Samuel all the time, getting the handoff. But I think Ja'Marr Chase is going to be that type of receiver, and it's going to be awesome to see him and T. Higgins and Joe Burrow for the future with Joe Mixon as well. But next we had TJ Watt won Defensive Player of the Year, which we kind of knew was going to happen. Saw that coming from the get after he tied Michael Strahan's sack record. Kind of really couldn't give it to anybody else. I guess Micah Parsons somewhat had a argument there, but I still
if the Browns were a little bit of a better team, you could conceivably say Myles Garrett, but because they were not so great this year, you gotta give it to TJ Watt.
Yep. And then AP Offensive Player of the Year, of course, was Cooper Kupp, wide receiver, setting all the records. Won Super Bowl MVP as well, which we will talk about later. One of the best receiver seasons ever, maybe one of the best player seasons ever, even in terms of what he did all around. Winning a Super Bowl MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, breaking all types of records. Just an amazing year from the receiver over there in Los Angeles. And then Defensive Rookie of the Year, of course, Micah Parsons. We kind of knew this from week one, pretty much.
Defensive Rookie of the Year, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Did I say defensive player? My bad. Yeah. Defensive Rookie of the Year. He just blew us all away. I mean, this is like a Lawrence Taylor type of rookie year. We haven't seen this type of defensive rookie year in 30 years. I don't even know the last time we saw a guy put up this type of stats, be this dominant from the start as a rookie, playing two different positions also.
Yeah, which is like so interesting because he was a guy who was taken lower in the draft because of all of this off-field stuff. And now I bet that everyone before Dallas Cowboys pick, they were like kicking themselves for not taking Micah Parsons.
Oh, and here's the thing about that too, a little bit about the Detroit Lions with Micah Parsons. The report is from Micah Parsons, the Detroit Lions called him and said, if you are on the board when we pick, we're taking you, right?
Yeah.
Because they didn't think Sewell would be there. And then Sewell ended up being there because the Miami Dolphins ended up going receiver. The Bengals ended up going receiver, and we got Sewell. So it sounds like either way, the Lions were going to get one of the best players in this draft. And that's a great sign going forward for this scouting department.
Well, wasn't Waddle taken like 7th?
Waddle was taken 5th.
I think Chase was taking 5th.
I thought, let me look at this. I thought it was, Waddle was 6. Chase
Waddle
was 5.
6?
Yeah, Chase was 5. Waddle was 6. Sewell was 7. So
okay.
Yeah. That's I knew both of them went, but yeah, you're right. It was the opposite because the Dolphins traded with the Eagles at pick 6 to get to his receiver. But yeah, I mean that's a wild thing to think about that either way the Lions were going to get one of the best players in this draft. Which like I said, is a great sign for the future in this draft for the GM and the scouting department. They know what they're doing, basically, is what I'm getting at. And then AP Comeback Player of the Year, of course, Cincinnati Bengals quarterback Joe Burrow. A lot of people thought this was going to be Dak Prescott early on. I even thought it was going to be Dak Prescott early on, but Joe Burrow just went off at the end of the year, specifically in a few games, specifically the game against the Chiefs, where he really showcased his skills and that comeback. It definitely deserved. Still doesn't have an O-line, but made it to the Super Bowl. I mean, after tearing his ACL, beautiful. I mean,
yeah. I feel bad for Joe Burrow not having an offensive line.
Yeah, me too.
That game, that Super Bowl game, we're going to talk about soon, but would have looked a lot different if they had O-line, especially at right guard.
I agree. And then our Art Rooney Sportsmanship Award went to New England Patriots special teamer Matthew Slater. I feel like he's won one of these before. I feel like I've heard his name in that award before. But and then AP Assistant Coach of the Year is Dallas Cowboys defensive coordinator Dan Quinn. Of course, he was a guy that a lot of people loved coming into this head coach cycle, and he said, "No, I'm staying in Dallas. I'm going to be the coordinator here." And another thing, which I know we've talked about before, but it just popped into my head because I watched that movie yesterday about Sean Payton. I think Sean Payton's going to coach the Cowboys.
Yeah.
I think so, because you brought it up. I think you brought it up either last week or the week before, talking about how he took the year off, and everything. And I really do think he's going to come back to coach the Cowboys, because even in that movie, there was some stuff in it that I was like, wow, that felt really obvious. Like he wanted that in that movie. But anyway, Dan Quinn decided he's going to stay in Dallas, didn't want a head coach job this year. And I think that could have been because his first two teams, or his top two teams that he wanted to go to, they already hired somebody. So he was like, screw it, I'll just wait till next year.
Jerry Jones says that he declined a head coaching opportunity to stay with the Cowboys, which is, if true,
right,
is amazing.
That is true, but my thing is, I don't know if it's the one he wanted. You know what I mean? Like, I think because he pulled himself out of all head coaching jobs, which means he would have turned it down regardless. But I think like Denver was one that he wanted. And there was another one. I can't remember the second one, but it might have been Chicago. It was the two earliest teams. I think it was Chicago, the second team to hire, or the first.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was the two earliest teams, and he was like, all right, I'm going to just stay in Dallas, because a lot of people, my point with the Sean Payton stuff was a lot of people seem to believe that Mike McCarthy won't be there after this season. So maybe that's why Dan Quinn stayed, because he's like, well, if I stay and then he gets fired, I'll be the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. You know what I mean? So, and that would make a lot of sense. And then we had our FedEx Air and Ground Players of the Year. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback, Tom Brady, was the FedEx Air Player of the Year. And then the FedEx Ground Player was Indianapolis Colts running back Jonathan Taylor. Both of these were deserved. I think Tom Brady should have won MVP, in my opinion, just based off statistics, how his team did. I don't understand what happened there, but we'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
And then Jonathan Taylor won the Ground Player of the Year, which was pretty clear in my opinion, because I mean, he was in the MVP race as the only running back. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then the AP Coach of the Year, of course, was Mike Vrabel. And I feel like we were pretty much cut and dry with this one for the last couple of weeks. We pretty much knew who was going to win that. Everybody pretty much knew. It was pretty clear who was going to and who should have won the Coach of the Year. And I think it was Mike Vrabel. Have to agree with that one. Being the number one seed without your best player, that's a tough thing to do, especially when the Kansas City Chiefs exist in that AFC. And then AP Most Valuable Player was Aaron Rodgers. Oh, I think Tom Brady should have won that. Personally,
I completely agree with. Aaron Rodgers should have won MVP. I actually love the pick. I think Aaron Rodgers was the best player this year. But again, with all of the negative media surrounding his political vaccination status, I didn't think that he would get the votes to get it. So I'm really proud of the NFL that was not the case, and that Aaron Rodgers got that award that I think he deserved. Because to me, he was by far, in a way, the best quarterback this year. So
yeah. And I'll agree. I'm really glad that they didn't bring politics into it, because that's the last thing we want is politics, telling us who's going to be the NFL MVP. That'd be ridiculous. But right. I think Tom Brady deserved it because, I mean, the only thing Aaron Rodgers had over him was what? Being the number one seed?
I mean,
he had yards, touchdowns.
So Aaron Rodgers also had injuries on him.
Yeah.
So you could say that Aaron Rodgers did it with less.
I mean, he had Devontae Adams all year.
Yeah, I
and
suppose.
Chris Godwin tore his ACL like what, week 14?
Yeah. I don't know.
So I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things that it's weird.
You make a good point.
It's weird because it's like, I get why Rodgers won it. Don't get me wrong. I understand the argument, but personally, I look at it like, okay, MVP. He didn't have the most yards. He didn't have the most touchdowns. I guess he had the least interceptions, but like he missed 2 games.
Yeah.
Or 1 game. Was it 2 or 1?
I think it was 1.
Yeah, because he missed that game against the Chiefs, which they almost won. So it's like, I don't think that you could put freaking Blaine Gabbert in the Buccaneers offense and they'd almost win the game. I just don't think that would happen.
Yeah.
But maybe that's a testament to Jordan Love being better than Blaine Gabbert. But either way.
You don't say.
I would hope so. But Aaron Rodgers wins MVP. It is what it is. I'm probably more mad just because he's the only guy I didn't bet on. So, of course, that's how that works.
I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was Aaron Rodgers and then Tom Brady received a vote and then Cooper Kupp received a vote. And that was all the voting there.
Yeah. So, yeah, Aaron Rodgers blew everybody else away when it comes to MVP voting. And then last but not least, the Walter Payton Man of the Year was LA Rams left tackle Andrew Whitworth. This is one of my favorite awards personally because it's an award given to a football player that's good at football but better off the field. It's one of those pretty cool awards that shows what you did off the field, like for your neighborhood, your community. It shows a lot of stuff, and these guys specifically do a lot of charity and all that kind of stuff too to get this. But yeah, congrats to all these guys for winning their awards this year, and we'll see who does it next year, as always.
One thing that I would like to bring up that just popped in my head with Aaron Rodgers specifically is that the Packers recently just hired Tom Clement back, which was their old quarterback coach, and now is their current quarterback coach. I think that's an excellent hire because from all I heard is that Aaron Rodgers really liked Luke Getsy, and with him gone, there was talk that he might want to go to a different team, but Aaron Rodgers also really liked Tom Clement. So if that was another signing that the Packers did just for Rodgers, the Packers get brownie points for me there. I love that signing.
I also think that Aaron Rodgers is going to come back this year. Big thing is, I don't know if Devontae Adams does. That's going to be the biggest question mark on this Packers year, because they pretty much have to franchise tag him in order to keep him financially.
Yeah.
And I mean, they have to do a lot of cuts as well. They will cut Preston Smith most likely and a couple other guys to open up some cap. But it's going to be a weird offseason for a lot of teams, like the Packers and the Saints that really don't have cap space. In the Saints and Packers aspect, they're negative cap space. So they're going to have to do a lot just to even get back to zero. But last but not least, the Super Bowl. Matthew Stafford has finally gotten his ring. Finally, congratulations to him. Congrats to the entire Rams organization. They did what they needed to do. They put all the chips to the middle of the table. They said, screw it, we're going all in. And it worked perfectly. And honestly, this was a great Super Bowl. This is one of my favorite Super Bowls I've ever seen personally. Because it's not like it's hard to say. It's not like your iconic Super Bowl where there's a bunch of holy crap, what just happened plays, or a Mario Manningham catch. But it was one of those games that you never knew who was going to win. You never knew really what was going to happen. And the Bengals kept in it all the way to the end. And it was just a great game, in my opinion. And you got a little bit of everything. You got some defense, you got some offense, you got, some other stuff going on. It was just a great game, in my opinion.
So what I would say, and it's the only part of the Super Bowl that I was disappointed with, is that I felt like the referees played a very safe game.
Yeah.
And not many flags were thrown and all that other stuff. But what really kind of got me ticked off is that the Rams' final offensive drive, 3 flags were thrown in the 10-yard line. Like, if
that's
you're
what I
going
was
to
gonna
call,
say. Like, it's wild.
if you're gonna call a safe non-flag game, like it did, don't throw 3 flags when the Rams are about to score a touchdown.
Especially when it's like towards the end of the game. I could understand maybe switching it up in like the second half or something.
Yeah.
But we're talking about the last 8 minutes of the game here, 5 minutes maybe even. And you're gonna totally change how you've been calling the game throughout the whole game to the last drive. It's just like I just don't get it, you know. That's one of those things, and I'm glad you brought this up because I hadn't even thought about this before you just said something about it. And I'm not going to say that really ruined the game, but there were a couple plays like the specific T. Higgins 75-yard touchdown on Jalen Ramsey. There's a couple more in there, but that's the specific one that I can remember because he grabbed his face mask and just kind of tossed him, you know. And at minimum, that's a face mask penalty, but it was a 75-yard touchdown in the Super Bowl.
Right, and then didn't call it.
Yeah, and so then they call some crap at the end of the game. It was a weird game. It was really weird.
It was. That's personally what I disliked about the Super Bowl mostly. But you gotta give it up for the Rams.
Yeah.
The Rams, they've put their team beautifully. They went all in with Stafford and signing Odell Beckham.
Trading for Von Miller.
Trade for Von Miller. They did things perfectly, and they ended up on top. So kudos to them and congrats.
And also kudos to the Bengals because this is a team we never saw it getting here. We never thought could get there at all. It was, I mean, most people didn't even think the Bengals were going to make the playoffs halfway through the season even. And because I made a bet that the Bengals would win the NFC or AFC North. I think it was like week 5 that I put the bet in. And I think I was like plus 700 odds or something. Like I think I bet $2 and won like 15 or something like that. It was because they ended up winning their division. But that just goes to show you that even the betting, the sports books didn't believe in the Bengals.
Right.
And they were one of the better teams in the NFL at that time. I think they were even 4-1 or 3-2 maybe.
Oh man.
You know, and it's one of those things that nobody believed in them. And they did it. They did what they had to do. And it's going to be awesome to see their trajectory for the next 5 years, 10 years to see where Joe Burrow can take them.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm interested to seeing that. I would love them to get offensive line though. Holy moly.
I hope they get Teron Armstead in free agency. That would be beautiful. Them or Miami. Those are the 2 teams I really want him to go to.
Yeah.
It'd be perfect
I like
fit.
That. But yeah, that Logan Wilson.
Oh yeah.
Call.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen video on it and people have explained to me why it was holding, but if they kick a field goal in that, we're looking at overtime football. And that would be amazing because that Super Bowl was really good.
Yeah.
But they caught him for holding and called 2 other flags.
And speaking of Logan Wilson, he played amazing all game. Dude was locked down. Dude was playing like a corner. Like it was wild.
I felt that if the Bengals won that game, Logan Wilson would have been an MVP.
Yeah. I don't know if he would have just because the stats weren't there necessarily, but he won the eye test MVP.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
he was so good.
That's another thing too. The MVP. Do you think Cooper Kupp should have won?
Yes.
I agree with you. A lot of people are upset that Stafford didn't win it. A lot of people are upset that Aaron Donald didn't win it. Here's my things against Stafford, okay? And don't kill me for this because I don't necessarily believe this, but statistically, he had 2 interceptions. In the Super Bowl, when you have 2 interceptions, you're not likely to win MVP unless you're Patrick Mahomes, which I don't know about that because I think the running back should have won personally, but and that's a different thing. But here, Cooper Kupp had 2 touchdowns. He had 8 receptions, 92 yards. He was pretty much unstoppable in the game. And Aaron Donald was another guy people thought should win the MVP because he made those last 2 stops. He had 2 sacks in the game, 7 tackles, which you could give it to him as well. But personally, when this is the way I look at it, when you're in the NFL, the voters are going to lean offense and the voters are going to lean perfection. So if you have 2 interceptions, it's most likely they're going to not give you the benefit of the doubt just because you turn the ball over twice. Stafford's interceptions were contextual because, I mean, the first one was kind of a punt pretty much. And it was 3rd and 14. He threw it deep into the end zone and they got intercepted. And then the second one wasn't really on him. It hit his receiver in the hands and he just dropped it, went into the air and got intercepted. Yeah. So it's one of those things where you could say, yeah, statistically it was bad, but in the other ways it wasn't. But when you have a guy like Cooper Kupp, like we said before, offense player of the year, you know, he broke all these records, Super Bowl MVP, wins the Super Bowl. It's the perfect season, the perfect ending to his season. So good for him.
So to me, the reason why Cooper Kupp won MVP is because I don't believe the Rams win that Super Bowl without Cooper Kupp's performance in the last drive.
Yeah.
Because I think that Cooper Kupp had like 8 to 10 receptions that last drive. That last drive was long. I don't know how many yards the Rams need to get on that drive specifically, but that drive killed a lot of clock and ultimately ended up with a touchdown due to some flags, but you know, it's okay. And Cooper Kupp was really the only wide receiver that Stafford was targeting. And so to me, if you take Cooper Kupp out of that picture, who does Stafford target in that situation? It's a whole different ballgame. There's that third tight end that had a pretty good game, but other than him and Kupp, I don't think Stafford really liked the wide receivers that were on the field.
Yeah. And with that too, I feel like I agree with you because not only in the Super Bowl did that happen, the week before Kupp won them the game. I mean, he just comes out in the end of the game and just kills it.
So I would never understand Cooper Kupp.
Yeah.
Because he's such a good wide receiver, and like every time that I've seen him play, which has been very rare, I haven't really watched many LA Rams games besides the playoffs. So I could be that. But during big moments, he's always open. I don't understand it whatsoever. How can you have this offensive player of the year type that broke a lot of records? People generally say best wide receiver season of like ever. How's he always wide open? Like, how do you not have 2 or 3 guys just covering him all the times?
They do. That's the thing. He's just that good. He just it's like a Devontae Adams type. It's like Devontae Adams isn't the tallest. He's not the fastest. I mean, he's tall and fast, but he's not the tallest or the fastest or, you know, the quickest or the biggest or anything. But they're smart. They're technical, like Keenan Allen as well. They're just so technical. They know all the little stuff. Like Cooper Kupp is probably the smartest wide receiver in football right now, based off of just how he gets open. I mean, if you look at it, like you said, he's always open in these big moments when he's getting double covered. Well, that's because he knows what coverage they're playing before they play. He knows what route, like he's going to run the route that he's told, but you can change it a little bit when you're Cooper Kupp. You know what I mean?
And this guy was a 1-star recruit that got like no offers from college.
Yeah. And that just goes to show you it's a lot of it's athleticism, but a lot of it for him specifically is just knowing the right things to do in the right situations, pretty much. And like you said earlier with Allen Lazard, being a smart receiver can take you places when you don't have, you know, your elite traits and stuff like that. Which, I mean, like I said, Devontae Adams, Keenan Allen, those are all guys that thrive off of that. But congratulations to the LA Rams. Congratulations to Cooper Kupp for winning MVP. Congrats to Stafford on winning a Super Bowl. I think that's all I got for this one, though. You got anything else? All righty.
No, I don't. I have some free agency news. Well, free agent trade news, but we'll save that for another day.
Awesome. All righty. We'll catch you guys on the next one next Saturday, most likely. See you next time, Thomas.
All right. See you next time.